We set goals for ourselves every year. We do it on our anniversary in August. Is that something that you guys have ever done, sort of like, goal setting like you would do for a business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I introduced it to Mitch when we first started dating. I had had a few relationships and they always seemed to like fizzle out, not great. And I'm like, I'm going to take more of a business attitude with this relationship because I want it to work. So I kind of even did a marketing plan just to even find him. And then when we started dating, we had a monthly performance review. And it was, we would get a bottle of champagne and we'd hang out and we would tell each other what's working, what's not, what we could improve on, and are we going to sign back up for another month?
I love that. I'm Julie Bullitt. I've been a family therapist for over 30 years.
I'm David Bullitt. I've been a divorce and family lawyer for more than 35 years.
Together, we have been married for more than 37 years.
In our professional practices, the two of us have been witnesses to individuals and families struggling with life's most difficult challenges. In this podcast, we will talk about the conversations we have had,
the conversations we should have had,
and those that every relationship needs to have in order to find success, happiness, and fulfillment.
This is Conversations for Couples,
the podcast. Welcome back to Conversations for Couples,
the podcast.
So usually I start with a lengthy introduction and bios and links and those types of things. But for this particular episode, we're going to start with a story that sort of goes something like this. A lawyer and a therapist go into a bar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And sit down and meet this amazing...
A divorce lawyer.
A divorce lawyer.
You missed that part. God, the punchline was going to be so much better.
Yeah, divorce lawyer and a therapist go into a bar.
And a couples therapist
go into a bar. Yeah, really botched the beginning. But you get the drift. And we meet these two gentlemen and spent, 2 hours?
Yeah.
And a couple of cocktails. And just such an interesting couple with such an interesting background that we harassed them into coming onto our show. So welcome, Brad Weber, Mitchell Plave. Thank you guys very much for coming on. We're so excited to have you. Yeah. So if we can, what I'd like to do is start a little bit with, each of your backgrounds, your family lives before you got together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's quite quite a journey. So I grew up in a very small Midwest farm town area, and grew up in a very religious home, and you kind of were a certain way, and you didn't waver off that. And I knew since a very young child that there was something unique, different about myself. I couldn't figure out what it was, and then I decided to kind of put that feeling away. And my father gave me a choice in life back then. It was farm, factory, or the military. So I had to go to option D, and that was to figure out a way to get myself out of this area, go to school, pay for my school. So I did, and I worked in the hospitality industry to put myself through college. And I decided that I knew inside that I was gay. But I knew I couldn't. My parents would go nuts. Everybody would go nuts. So I put it away. I was able to put it into a vault, which I don't recommend, by the way. And I met a woman, and I got married at a very young age. And we were married for, 18 years, and moved from the Midwest out to the Washington, D.C. metro area. My career skyrocketed, took off, and I was on the road traveling 150, 200 days a year. So I was just constantly trying to climb that ladder. And then finally one day at the age of 41, I'm like, you know what? Can't do this anymore. And I had a conversation with my then wife, and it was great. And our son at the time was about 9 years old. And we decided that let's be true to ourselves. And I came out, and the rest is history, as they say, at least up until I met this fine man. So but that's kind of how it happened for me. So.
Wow. That's a great story, and I have a lot of questions about that. But let's hear from Mitchell now and kind of what your journey looked like.
So I grew up in New York on Long Island, and in a fairly traditional Jewish community. Probably not atypical for Long Island, like socially a little bit conservative, politically not for a lot of people. But anyway, uh, I didn't know any gay people. I knew, like Brad did, that there was something there, but there were no role models. It just wasn't a thing.
Mhm.
And I wanted to have a traditional life. So went to college. I went to Wesleyan, where I met my ex-wife. She was a couple of years before me, and we dated for a couple of years. Then I came to Washington for law school, and she followed. So we got married, and we were together for like essentially 17 years, 15 of which were married. Have two kids who are now 30 and 32. But, around the time I was in my late 30s, the kind of difficulty of suppressing this part of me became very, very difficult. So, a year of therapy later, it just seemed clear that there's no way to keep living like this. So I came out to my former wife, and we dealt with the kids. And what else can I say? Even 25 years ago, when I came out, and this has to do with us, there were very few, gay couples back then who had kids.
Mm.
It just wasn't there was no marriage equality. And so, we both dated some people, but when we met, one of the things that really drew us together was that we both had children. And it was, I think probably not so much now, a disconnect between the gay community and the straight community, because, we had or have kids, and there's so many, things, it was like a common language, all the experiences that you have as a parent. And we both dated separately some people who were not particularly tuned into that. And that became a stumbling block in terms of building a relationship.
Yeah.
So when we met at a restaurant down in Chinatown.
You meet all the best people at restaurants, don't you?
Yes, we do.
Met on Match.com, but we set up a date.
Oh, okay. So it was Match.com. Very cool.
Yeah, and we set up a date and talked until the restaurant closed, basically around us. And there were a lot of things we enjoyed about one another. The thing in common that really brought us together was having children, and because we had so many shared experiences.
Yeah.
So
actually similar. I know everybody's experience is unique, right? And nobody's life is similar in the way that it can be exactly. But the story that you tell, both of you had these feelings that they needed to suppress. You chose a traditional life, and had a family, and then came out. So is that, do you guys joke about sort of like the before and after lives that you've had, like this life versus that life, or how do you reference the two lives, if you will?
It's a really great question. I kind of view it as life. Like I don't think pre-post of pre coming out or post coming out. There's definitely, when I think back to early on in my career, my marriage, I played straight, and so I definitely I even to the point of like how I dress, my concern, I had more, the haircut, everything, just because I was in the corporate boardroom. And I remember playing that. And then as I was getting closer and closer to kind of being, real to myself, I'm like, you know what? By the way, the word metrosexual kept me in the closet for 5 more years.
Transitional.
I was able to find a word that matched the fact that I liked fashion and I liked to look, and I wanted good haircuts and cool glasses. So, and then, I think I look at pictures of myself pre, coming out, and it's a different person. It was playing a different role. So I think now, so I would view myself today as feeling a whole sense of freedom, complete freedom, and not realize I actually wasn't free before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me
That
a little bit about, as I want to talk about the interaction with each of you and your families, your children, your ex-spouses, in terms of those discussions that each of you had. First of all, how did they go? Number one, and number two, do they still sort of live in your lives today in terms of your relationship with those former spouses? And I want to talk to you about your children and that too. But I'm just curious to know, how did those discussions go? How did they handle them? And then, is that still sort of a thread that exists, in your lives today?
Um, for me, it was a very surreal moment. I was the president of an organization, and we were at a black tie gala in Palm Springs, California, of all places. And we were getting prepared to go, and I was going to make a speech. And then we would start the event off by she and I dancing together in front of everyone. And we're sitting there, and she was looking at me, and I was behind her helping her fasten a necklace that she was putting on. And she was looking in the mirror at me, and I looked down at her, and I'm like, oof, that's a different look I don't think I've seen before. And it wasn't anger. It wasn't anything. And she just said, we need to talk. And she said, I can't do it anymore. And I looked at her and I said, I know you hate these events. I know you don't like being up in front of people. And she goes, no, honey. And she stood up, and we held hands and stared at each other. And she said, I can't do this anymore. She said, we're roommates. And I said, and she said, I just want you to be true to yourself. And which has become a moniker for me. In fact, in my office, I have a photograph of myself with it written on my arms. And I said, can you handle it? And she goes, yes. And I said, I'm gay. And she goes, I know. Now let's go dance. And that was it. And then we went and talked to our son. We wrote out the divorce on the back of an United Airlines cocktail napkin. And we came back home, and we had a chat with our son and had a great conversation with him, and he understood, and he was okay with it. In fact, he said, after we told him, and he was kind of upset, he goes, well, wait a minute, are we still going to the beach this weekend? We're like, we're still going to the beach. As far as today, there's not really a relationship any longer. She and I, it's, eventually everyone just kind of went their own ways, and it's nothing bad. It's just, there's just nothing there, anymore. So.
How old is your son now before we shift over?
My son is 30. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay, I'm going to come back to that. Good, Mitchell. Let's hear from you a little bit.
So, my ex-wife and I had a very nice relationship. We kind of grew up together and started a family together. We had a house, and we had a nice life. And as I said, I got to the point where it became too big a presence to ignore. And that's when I started the therapy. And, I didn't tell her what it was. And finally she insisted on knowing. And we sat down in the living room, and I told her, and it was very difficult for her, and understandably, because we had a life together. My path was different than Brad's. It was turned into a very adversarial situation for several years. But eventually, over the years, it got much better. And she passed away about 5 years ago from glioblastoma. But before she did, in the 3 or 4 years before that, we had really reestablished a good relationship. We have the kids, we both love the kids. And the really bad stuff kind of faded away, and we had a really nice, somewhat distant, but it was a nice relationship. And
how old are your kids now?
They are 31 and let's see,
32 and 30.
32 and 30.
Yeah.
32 and 30.
And how is each of your relationship with your children? And before you answer that, you've been together for how long and married for how long?
Gosh, we just hit almost the 20-year mark together, and then married for 9. It'll be 10 years this October.
Okay. And you do. What's your relationship with your kids now?
It's a tough conversation, tough one. I don't want to go too deep into it. I don't have a relationship any longer, really, with my son, and that's due to lots of reasons. So
Okay,
that's tough. Fortunately, amazing relationship with Mitch's kids, like amazing. Like, and
that's great.
we're with them all the time. We're on the phone with them. They told us that we're going to become grandparents this July. So
Yes, I
Awesome.
remember that. I
Congratulations. That's
remember
great.
at the bar told us you announced that, and that's just an amazing chapter in one's lives.
And one more follow up, and I don't want to go into a topic that you don't feel comfortable speaking about, which is perfectly fine. But I do want to ask about each of your relationships with your children, and how, if at all, that impacts your the two of you, your relationship, and how you may deal with, without getting into Brad, the situation, how that may pop up, and how the two of you sort of work through that yourselves.
Let's
I'm a
see.
lawyer. I ask a lot of tough questions.
Oh, I'm a lawyer too, so
I know,
You're a lawyer too.
you're like, I wish the social worker was asking the question.
it's a good question, and I don't know that it differs from other couples where there's been a divorce. Where people reunite after having divorces. Some of it is just regular kid stuff where we might have differences of opinion about how to parent, but which is, again, not unusual. But we have a great relationship with my two children, who are our two children.
That's great.
They're great. They're accepting. It has been a journey. As I said, it was kind of rough after, in the first many years, with the ex-wife, and anyway, they love Brad, and he's the fun one. I'm the serious one.
Yeah.
But they're great. They both are married. They have great careers. They're happy. Our son is expecting. I mean, it's just turned out really. This relationship now is what I'd always hoped it would be, and it took a long time.
No,
That's
that's
awesome.
early on in our relationship, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no, you're good.
When we came together and we're like talking about the fact we both have kids, that type of thing, our styles were very different. But he also went through something different. He was dealing with a lot of other forces on raising them, and there are things maybe I think I wouldn't, in my head I'm like, I wouldn't do it like that, or something. But that there was sometimes some tension, where I also grew up in a very, very difficult, very strict family, so I was used to like certain things in certain ways, and you didn't push the envelope at all. And what I love about the energy with our kids is that they'll challenge conventional wisdom. They'll push it, and I love that. So I think I think what's going to be really interesting is watching us together as grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be wild.
Brad. I'm just imagining what the shopping's going to look like for you and this baby. This baby's going to be well outfitted, whether it's a girl or a boy. I can just imagine.
The girl we just found out.
That's exciting.
Yes, I've already been like, if you saw my Google searches over here, yeah. And I've got to be, calm down a little bit, because
Yeah. No, go for it. Go
No
for it.
reason to calm down. Grandparenting is is just the greatest thing. Now, so you go to Salt and Vine, obviously, because that's where we met you here in the Olney area. What other kind of things do you guys like to do and enjoy together? I know, Mitchell, were you in the process, or have you retired at this point?
I retired a month ago.
Oh boy,
Wow,
congratulations.
congratulations. Mazel tov.
That's right.
It's,
So you got some other that would have been billable hours on your hands.
So how do you think that the retirement is going to impact your relationship?
It already has.
the honeydew list is very
Well, the honeydew list is 32 pages long. So I travel, I said, 200 plus days a year. So I'm go. And now he'll be able, so for the first time ever, he may be able to come and join me in certain cities and actually maybe see me on stage or see the MC work or the facilitation work I do. So, which is wild because he's never been able to do that. I think I think there needs to be a support group for the spouses of someone who retire first, because all of a sudden I'm looking at, he's kind of putzing around the house doing stuff. I'm like, are you okay? Like, oh God, the best. He was he was in bed the other day in the middle of the day, and I walk in, I like pushed him. I'm like, "Are you sick?" He's like, "I'm taking a nap. I've never had a nap in my life."
How was a nap?
Good.
It was good. Do you think you're gonna be like resentful of his like slower pace, or do you think you're gonna try to embrace that?
I'm not gonna be, actually. You know what? I think I'm not going to be resentful because already I'm seeing him. He looks calmer. He is. So actually, I think it's going to help me slow down, and because I've been talking retirement for a while, and I think it's going to help me start to peel back a little bit from what I do to kind of start having a life. So.
Yeah, that's great. So I wanted to ask you guys, we work with a lot of couples and we do this ourselves. We set goals for ourselves every year. We do it on our anniversary in August. And is that something that you guys have ever done, sort of like, goal setting like you would do for a business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I introduced it to Mitch when we first started dating. I had a few relationships and they always seemed to like fizzle out, not great. And I'm like, I'm going to take more of a business attitude with this relationship because I want it to work. So I kind of even did a marketing plan just to even find him. And then when we started dating, we had a monthly performance review. And it was, we would get a bottle of champagne and we'd, hang out and we would tell each other what's working, what's not, what we could improve on, and are we going to sign back up for another month?
I love that.
I mean, it's interesting because we've done a lot of talks with groups, with business groups, companies, small companies, mostly smaller companies, but all over the country. And I go through this litany of questions, with these folks, which is just what you're talking about. How many of you in your business do a business plan? All the hands go up. And how many of you check in? You set goals, hands go up, and you see where you're above those goals, below those goals, adjust to fit where you are. All the hands go up. Now, how many of you do the same thing and set goals in your marriage? No,
Yeah.
and of course, the question is, how can you not?
Yeah, and David's been on a PIP plan several times with me. Yeah.
I object to that classification of a PIP plan.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, well, listen, it's been so much fun having you guys. I know it is a Sunday morning for us here, folks, on the East Coast. So tell us what's next for you, and what's the next exciting thing? Now we've got Mitch retired and taking naps. Brad is still traveling all over the country. So what's the next big thing for the two of you that you're planning to do together?
So we love exotic travel, and we try to do one major trip every year. We're going to pause the big, like 3 weeks going all over. We're going to pause that this year to spend more time because of the new baby coming.
Yeah,
we're going to start working on the next big adventures. Like we want to go all over Asia. We want to do a safari. We want to do something. Really, our daughter lives in Europe, so we're always going to Europe. So we want to do something completely different. So I think it'll be fun just to start doing that. As far as I think, health, I think we both are realizing that we're not spring chickens. And so we're going to start spending some more time trying to get really healthy too.
good.
Yeah.
I love that. Working out together is awesome.
Julie's dad is 92. And he has his bourbon every evening around 4 o'clock. Maybe he has a second one. But he said something to me, and he's a scientist and a little bit maybe on the spectrum here and there.
Probably.
But very has some very good insights. And he said something to me a few years back, which I'll always remember, and that is, do what you want while you can. And I don't know if you made it up or not, but it has stuck with me, and trying to live our lives that way too. So, all right, fellows, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being with us. We're gonna we're gonna put a little some notes in our story notes, folks, so you can hear more about this. And give us a call, drop us a line, ask any questions that you want. As always, you can find us at The Bullets, TheBullitts, on all social media platforms, on YouTube and all the rest of it. And thanks again for listening, for watching. This is
Conversations for Couples,
the podcast. Julie Bullitt is a professionally licensed clinical social worker and family therapist. David Bullitt is a divorce and family lawyer. Julie is not your therapist, and David is not your lawyer. This podcast is meant for educational and entertainment purposes only.